himself or herself. But we have some funny things happening in the country. The United States of America allows for people to have guns, but then at the same time, there is a crisis because people need to be protected. How do you protect the citizenry from persons who go wild and berserk? There has to be a line drawn in the sand. In this kind of criminal activity. But when people are allowed to get away, particularly a person sees that he or she can do something and get away with it, it is set in the hearts of the sons of men to continue to do evil. And so when evil is not punished severely, it has to be very severe punishment. Because so many people, too many people, in fact, in my view, have lost their lives in the United States, people going about their business. I remember in one particular store, a Caucasian male walked into a store and shot a whole lot of people of color. Even the security guard who tried to stop him was also shot to death. And it's this the kind of thing you have happening in places in the United States. You never know when violence is going to break out. It could happen on a train. It could happen on the bus. It can happen in the schools, even in churches. Churches are not even protected. You know, the police can't be everywhere. I can understand that because you have very limited police officers. And in our country, we have even more limited police officers. They say they need 2,000. We will see how that adds up, but they need police officers. Well, I don't know whether this is discrimination. They said 18 to 30, if I'm not mistaken. That's the age grouping. They want to recruit police officers. They're not looking at young people like myself. I may want to be a police officer. I may decide to come out of broadcasting. No, I can stay right here. I ain't going nowhere. But the point is, the age, I think, for the police recruits 18 to 25. I take that back. And if I'm incorrect on that, anyone out there who knows it could call me and say, Professor, 18 to 25, 18 to 30, whichever one it is. But they want 2,000. They need 2,000 police officers or potential police officers, people to train to be police officers. And I think we need more of them. And let us hope that we can find them, competent, reliable, responsible young people, to become police officers and to protect the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And of course, Defense Force officers, they may also have a recruitment drive themselves, young men and young women. We've seen a lot of young women come forward, but we have a problem with the males. We're losing too many males, Bahamians. We got to tell these young males they got to stop shooting up one another, injuring one another, killing one another. That contributes to the shortage of manpower. National insurance will be affected, police force is affected, other areas of the economy are affected because you have this massive shortage of manpower. And for a small country like the Bahamas, its population size, well, they say it's around 400,000 or thereabout. And the rate is 5 murders per 100,000. So you're looking at 15 to 20, not more than 20 murders may be expected in that kind of a population. But we're well over 100. every year we have over 100 murders in recent times. And I got to see how it was counted from when we started the first 100, but we've had 100 last year, I believe, and the year before. Is a continual trend. That is too many people dying from gunshot, from people being murdered, stabbed. And you got one fellow out there in the business of taking a sharp knife or instrument and stabbing people in the neck. And you know the neck has the jugular vein, and people can people to be dead. That's very tragic. So you have to report those individuals, and they're doing the same thing in Minnesota. They're asking the people to report these psychos to the police because it doesn't make any sense. People sending their children to school, and a psycho decides, I'm going to stake out this particular school, and then he decides he's going to strike. And in his demented state, he wants to kill children. Hey, people, children. This is a serious problem, Bahamians. We got people here where unfortunately a lady, a girl, teenager, I guess, from a school in the South, was found dead. And of course, living in a situation which was not safe to begin with, having to walk in the dark to go to school and then later on in the evening to walk to where she was supposed to be living and never made it back on one particular day. Was found dead, strangled to death by some demented person. And I want to caution parents, please, as of today, the 28th day of August, you're going to have to take extra protection for your children. Do not leave them with any and everyone, see, even relatives and all, grandfathers, grandmothers. I mean, I didn't have this problem when I was growing up. Whenever mommy and daddy tell you to go, you go over there, you go there, you go there, fine. But nowadays, grandfather molesting the grandchildren. What kind of crap is this? Where did that come from? That ain't no Bahamian. Can't be no Bahamian. Molestation of children. Then, of course, you got some who got these funny ideas in their head. What if your child comes home to you today and say, your daughter says, I want to be a boy? Because this is happening in the United States now, very frequently, where children are having sex changes without parental approval. Now that's a serious thing, Bahamians. And we must not sleep here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to believe that some funny things are not happening. We just have to be aware. We have to be cautious. We have to be careful. Because see, when the cat comes out of the bag, the damage is already done. That doesn't make any sense. The damage that happened in Minnesota is real. 2 children are dead. 19 others, I believe that one report said they were seriously injured. But they're scarred for life. Who's going to pay for the damages? 2 families are suffering because the little children, these are small children, who are now dead, have to be buried. Come on, Bahamians. It's happening here too, on a smaller scale, of course. But school just opened in the United States. And on the first week, they have these school killings. And that is not a good thing. I'm going to introduce myself, Brother Cartwright. Welcome to the state to express yourself. Let me get let me get this right. Express yourself on the Global Radio Network 99.5 FM. Welcome to the show.
A pleasant good afternoon, Professor. I appreciate you having me here, and to the global audience worldwide and locally. Look at this, particularly in the Bahamas. We don't seem to understand that we have a plethora of young men who are falling through our educational systems
Yes.
every year. And it seems that governments, not just one, governments has not come up with any solid solution to reverse this trend that is happening in our country. And it get to the point that even where I remember speaking with a young man a couple of years ago, and it always stayed with me. And he said, I went to prison and I ended up changing my life, but that stayed with me. I said, what do you mean? He said, even when I came out of prison, I had changed and I went to church. And he said, you know what I found out? I said, what? He said, even the church shunned him in a way. And he said, what upset him was that, he said, look at this. He said, many of our young ladies today are single parents and the church embraced them. He said, everything is basically reversed. He said, we're no longer on equal standing no more. So I said, well, it took me by surprise, and I took a step and I said, well, and I said to myself, he's right. But everything is about how we look at each other. We've been talking about this so much because I keep hearing people say, oh, you know what? Oh, the Bahamian young men, they don't want to work. And I said, where is this coming from? Why y'all keep pushing back against Bahamian young men trying to elevate themselves? And I said, you know what? It is the program. And when you think about all of our schools right now, we used to have in the schools where the young men and the young girls were taught woodwork. We had a caller last week was saying how the young women are now dominating.
Yes.
And I said, hey, you know what? Why haven't we looked and see? Because I've heard it from Mr. Leonard Sands, the president of the construction. He said, listen, when you look at the Caribbean and other countries, these people have their system set up whereby that their young people, especially their young males, they recognize their potential from a young age and they steer them into that program. And see, I was like, if you do that, then crime would go down for one. Because if a young man has something to do and he is happy doing what he's doing, with like a job or he's learning a skill, he doesn't have time to think negative or be influenced by those who doesn't want to do anything but the crime. And I remember when they had the building of the second phase of Atlantis, and I was working somewhere and in the afternoon time, and I remember someone said to me, we were sitting down watching a basketball game. He said, you know what? He said, you can't find hardly any young people, especially young men, in the inner city these days. So I said, what do you mean? He said, just about all of them over the bridge working. And I said, man, that's a good thing. And while we were talking, there was a gentleman who we knew was in the criminal, was a criminal element, and he's like, "Oh, you all in line?" So he's like, "What happened?" He said, "Man, that ain't my business." I said, "What do you mean? What ain't your business?" He said, "Man, all my customers, them now, everybody doing construction. I can't make it, though. I gotta wait till they come home or wait till the weekend." I mean, look at him. He's like, "Then you need to get out of this business." And so over that time, he noticed that we didn't see him. And so one day I saw him. I said, "Man, boy, you working on the island?" He said, "Yeah, doing construction." I said, "You doing construction?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "But you know, I doing my little thing on the side." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah." But he said, "But I see when you take young men and you give them a trade and they learn." He said, "Man, those young fellas, they were so happy because I remember a banker teller said to me, so the light upon those young men's face when they walk into the bank with their first paycheck, and they was like, wow, this is what I'm making." And they basically had some kind of skills that people appreciated and said most of them didn't even knew the measurement on the tape rule, but they were excited because why? They had something to look forward to. And I think we now need to look at our way our education system. Not everybody's going to be academically inclined. And we have to now look at, okay, we have to now have teachers given leeways to recognize children's potential. So those kids who now getting out of primary school and getting ready to go into junior school, teachers should now be able to look at those kids and say, you know something, this child is special. And here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna now recognize his talent and we'll talk to the principal, have his parents or their parents come and say, listen, your son might not be heavily academically inclined, but we recognize his potential of working with his hands. And we now recommend that instead of him going to the junior school, he should now be sent to a program where he learns if he wants to do auto mechanic, where he learns if he wants to do carpentry, if he wants to be a mason, where that he is learning something that he wants to do and he loves to do. And then in between, you have him with a little stipend where he goes out to those businesses that in that area and you employ him during the time until he completes his course. And by the time he's finished, and I always tell people, if you take someone at the age of 13 and you just training them, and by the time they reach 21, 18, 21, mindset mentally is now set with a habit. Now I am a working individual. People say, yeah, but we got BTVI. I said, but BTVI's program is geared for those who are finished and who are now, and I said, it's hard for someone at 18, 19 to just go in to learn a trade. Because here's the thing people don't realize. In the real world outside of school, a contractor doesn't have the time to really train his helpers because he has to meet a financial deadline for the job he's doing. So for him to now sit down and stop, like it's a classroom, whereby that if you have a trade school, whereby that trade school can have areas where they can practice their craft. So you can have whereby that certain parts of the school that they can learn how to lay, how to build, put up roofing, how to do cabinets, doors, and they build their school, start off with the basic and then they go and advance. And then eventually you'll even now have them now going back and repairing and doing works at the schools that they started out with. So it is the idea that governments needs to look at its curriculum and say, hey, is this working the way it is now? Because all we doing, if we see over the last 10, 15 years, we went from basically be a country that had mostly B's or C average students. D was like one or two. But now we down to the level where we seeing more F's. So you got a lot of young persons coming out, especially young men, who were not prepared for the outside world after school and who are not academically inclined. So what are you doing is that these young men now become frustrated because once they were always teased in school, oh, he's a dummy. He's a dummy. He ain't gonna never be nobody. And then when he goes, he doesn't have the skills to learn how to write his name properly on an application. All of these are simple things that you need to take in hand. Because once you abandon them, you always have the little, and I was telling you this. People say, oh, I say, no, crime. I say, there's not many criminal elements in this country. No. It is a small few, and those small few are cowards. Because why? They go and they prey on the young ones who they know. But look at, they ain't getting you nothing in school. You ain't gonna never do this. So guess what? Come work for me. Come do this for me. And they entice them with money because why? This is what drives most young people. And parents nowadays don't even ask their kids, where did you get this funds from? Who are you working for? Let me meet your boss. Whenever I was a child and I started working, I could not take any money home without having a definite explanation. And my mom would say, okay, well, you doing parking? Okay. She'd call the manager. How many jobs he did that day for him to make this kind of money? Because she doesn't gauge in how this money, if I come over with more than what I normally, she won't know who give me this money. And so all of these little things, we don't take it seriously. And one thing I've always told people is this. And I remember sitting with one of my cousins. She said, you know what? Because I ain't gonna raise my children like how my mother them raised me. And I said, why not? Oh, I said, but when you got beaten, did you do something wrong? Yeah. I said, but that's what you have to do. You don't have to kill your child, but you got to show them some tough love and you work with them. See what they like, and then you encourage them. You cannot make a child who you can see is not academically inclined and you trying to force them to become somebody academically. You're going to fail because the child is going to rebel. And then what you have, someone who basically is becoming antisocial. So you try to eliminate that. Now, our next area we talked about, and we don't say much about it, is that mental health. And that's something that now I see government is talking about. And it's like, we become so much Americanized that all of the bad habits America has, we are gradually, day by day, embracing. We don't allow to that we have gone away from our Christian principle and values, how and family oriented. We have now adopted the cultures of the outside world. And the outside world has basically influenced the way we do everything in this country. I told my nephew that day, I said, growing up, we would hear of a robbery. He's like, yeah. He said, well, how used to rob people back in the day, uncle? I said, well, fellas would walk in the bank with a sticker and they shouldn't tell us like there's a sticker. He said, what? I said, yeah, they would put their hand and finger underneath the shirt. I said, but you stick up. And people would just throw me say, uncle, you can't do that today, So these people around here shooting people. I said, I know. And I said, you know what happens? That came from a culture that is not as non-frivolous to us. And we embraced it. And I said, you might know, but I said, so Lyndon warned us about this. This time is coming. So Lyndon warned us. He said there's going to be 7 years of plenty, and then it's going to be 7 years of famine. And what we've done is that 7 years of famine turned into at least 30 plus 40 years of real famine because we basically took away all the structures that we were looking to build to move the country forward. And we just said, you know what? We're not going to build the country for us Bahamians. We can allow everyone to come in and influence our culture. And we saw the results. And this is what we have today.
Yeah,
like you said, grandfathers molesting grandchildren. Children used to be happy to go to
Of
grandparents.
course. That's why I'm saying it's not Bahamian, because the thing is,
Culture-wise, it's not us.
Sir Lyndon spoke about culture, and I
Yeah.
heard a portion of it on another show yesterday. But the principles, we don't hear enough about Sir Lyndon, and there are a lot of tapes about Sir Lyndon, but we don't play them on the airwaves. The things that he spoke about in the convention, I'm talking about the 37th convention that he was attending at that point in time. And the point is that a lot of things that he said, which would be beneficial to the country, we can use that today, but it seems as if these things have been shelved, put aside, and we take on some other things that are foreign to us. And we are losing what is really genuinely Bahamian. The country cannot open up to any and everybody. There's some things you have to say no to. There are agreements that have been signed by the government of the Bahamas. At the table, they send these people out there and they're signing all these things, but it isn't to our benefit,
No.
and that hurts the country. And so we have to exercise caution and restraint. Too many strangers, too many foreigners, too many aliens, too many outsiders are here now. I see them right in my own community. They don't speak a word of English,
And,
but yet they're hanging around.
but you know, one of the things, and I saw a black male this morning, and I said to him, I said, it ain't that we hate people, but when you look at your constitution, this is why I also admired Americans in some areas. Our constitution is unique because it says it's goes through beyond the top, but Christian principles and values. That was something that we uphold to our heart.
Yes.
As time evolved, we started to embrace others who came into our country with their culture.
Yeah.
They didn't try to adopt our culture. They played us to adopt theirs.
To their culture, yeah.
And basically, we eventually became more like them
That is true.
instead of being who we are.
Yes.
And so when you look at the fabric of what we had early years and now, it is basically being able to tell you, it's people say that's foreign. That
Yeah.
ain't us.
Yes.
But it becomes us because we basically keep embracing it.
That is
We
true.
don't fight against this. Hey, we don't want this. We got to do something to take this out.
Yeah, I think I had the
Yeah.
music in the background for the Cartwright. This is Professor Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network. My special guest is Brother Cartwright. He comes out every Thursday and every Friday. On the show, he has a very interesting perspective on national issues. The lines are open 326 0272 813 0271 3260271. This is Professor Sidney MacArthur Walter Thompson on Express Yourself on the Global Radio Network, 99.5 FM. We'll be back after the break.
in the inner city, you see most of that is non-existent with the Bahamians, but prevalent with non-Bahamians, especially those who kids goes to primary school and in the area. And most of the parents who you see going to school with their kids are non-Bahamians. Now, you will see that it's different when it comes to preschool because most parents will just jump in their cars and they drop the kids and then they come back and they pick them up. But to actually watch from the primary school level and even junior school and onward, you don't hardly see parents, Bahamian parents, taking their kids because now what they do is you see kids take the bus and they teach them how to take the bus and they take them. And so culturally, we are moving away from what we used to do.
Yes.
And those who are coming into our country, culturally has kept their culture where they basically watch and guide their children's pathway into becoming young adults by being there with them and teaching them their way and
Okay.
not allowing them to adopt our new way. And when you think about all of these things, and I remember last night I heard on the show last night, which I think Black Mill was on, and a guy called in, and I was like, "Does he understand the Constitution of the Bahamas?" Because he's like, "Hey man, this guy was a non-Bahamian and the
Yeah,
child,"
I heard all
and
of
I was
that.
like,
Yes. Yes.
"The Constitution doesn't cascade the child. All it's saying is that the child is in the Bahamas. It is the government's responsibility for all children. That's international all around the world. All children, all minors, is basically in the care of the state once things happen. But now, what he didn't explain and tried to explain was that if the state found out that both parents are non-Bahamian during their investigation, then the child will be returned with their parents to their parents' homeland.
Yes.
And if they were born here, they will be eligible to come back and apply at the right time. But if they meet the requirements, that's why when I tell people, we just run all around the bush. But if you look at this constitution we have, it gives us all the answers we need to build our country.
I agree with you. I believe you have a caller with a card right. Caller, you
Yes.
live on air. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes.
go
Good
ahead,
afternoon,
caller.
ma'am.
Yes.
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 Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah. I'm Mr. Cartwright.
Yes, ma'am.
I heard you talk about the non-Bahamians
Hmm.
who accompany their children to school at the primary school level.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens much today. That was something that really occurred in the past, but that hardly happens now.
No, ma'am. I live in.
Anymore.
Excuse me. Sorry, but darling, I live in the inner city. I live
Yes.
in
And
Cecilia,
so do I. And
and
so do
I've
I.
seen them
I mean,
pass me
There
every
were one
morning.
time ago. There were one time ago. People used to say, "Oh, the Haitian children are smarter than the Bahamians. They always tend to do well." Again, I used to ask them to provide me the empirical evidence of that.
Well, I could tell you one
Provide me
evidence
the
of it.
empirical
No,
evidence of
no,
that.
let
And
him
then
finish with the card. Yeah.
and even if you go and you look at the supplements that were in the papers for the school section, you can go and you can see that most of them are Bahamians. So when people used to say that the Haitian kids do better than the Bahamian kids, I say, well, until you can bring me that empirical data, I will say that's a falsehood.
Well, madam, I will tell you right now. If you ride on East Street and face East Street and Cordova Avenue, there's a big sign up. Top student for high school in that area. That child is not a Bahamian. And see,
I'm not saying that
no,
that they don't
hold
do
on.
well.
No,
All
what?
I'm saying that it was what used to be said in the past, and what is being said today is that
Well, okay
that
then. Well,
most of the Bahamian kids do not do well in school. And I say that's a falsehood. That's not true. And you look
okay.
at all the supplements, and you look at all the supplements that deal with schools. You'll see that most of them, you may have a one or two non-Bahamians in there, but for the most part, most of them are Bahamian,
Well, madam, here's the thing. If you know the
and in the
Constitution,
public schools at that.
madam, if you know the Constitution of the Bahamas, if a child born in the Bahamas of non-Bahamian parents, even if, according to the Constitution, this is what I always tell people, if you understand our Constitution when it comes to citizenship, if your parents cannot renounce, a child is basically take on the citizenship of his parents. So, and we've now even found out that in this country now, and I found this out the other day, about a couple of months, there was a lady who died in Grand Bahama. Her name was Cartwright. But here is the funny thing. All of her children, all of her relatives, her brothers, her sisters, all were Haitian. So how they become Cartwright? Those people have changed in using deports.
What you're saying to me is that
people change
all
names.
of those persons whose names are in there then that have English names.
Not all of them are.
They're all Asian.
No, I'm saying
that's what you're saying to me.
No, I'm saying all of them are not truly Bahamians. Because two things I've learned.
No, Mr. Cartwright, I have to disagree with you.
Well, madam,
I disagree with you. You might be from the Angliston area and over the hill.
No, I'm not from Angliston. See, that's again. If you go into Angliston,
you might be from the over the hill areas.
Let him finish.
You might be from the over the hill areas, but that's not true. That's not true. That is not true.
Well, madam,
like I said, like I tell people, until you can bring me the empirical data to prove that non-Bahamians are doing better than the Bahamian children, then that's a falsehood.
Okay.
Until you can bring me the empirical data.
Okay, so let me ask you this question.
So you don't assume that because the parents walk the children to school that they are automatically doing well at school
let me ask
and
you
doing better than Bahamian children.
Madam, I want to ask you a question. Just a simple question. And if you truly answer this question, and I would just let you finish up and end there. Do you think in this country we have a migration problem?
Yes, we do.
Do you think that majority of the people over the last 5 to 10 years, when you look at our infrastructure stuff that we have, such as the hospitals, the NIB, you look on the construction sites, the jobs and stuff, do you think that 99% of those people are Bahamians?
Mr. Carter, what I'm going to say, right? I don't think that 99% are not Bahamians. They're not Bahamians. I can see that myself. But what irks me is that, and I hear the government them saying that we lack the skill. We don't lack the skills in this country, you know. It's just that people don't want to pay what people are worth. And that is why they go and get the Haitians, because they're cheap labor. And and the Prime Minister is here bragging about expanding BTVI. You ought to be ashamed to say that. And this 20th century Bahamas, you ought to be ashamed to say that. Yeah, and I hate when we are completing the narrative that we don't have skilled Bahamians. Yes, we have skilled Bahamians. I know of a person, a guy, a Bahamian, and his Conky wife applied for a job on one of the family islands. They're both qualified, both certified. But you know what happened? The people going and bringing a foreigner to do the same job like the two. They could have gotten two for the price of one. So when people talk about Bahamians don't want to work, that's a lie. I hate to say lie. No, it's a lie.
But like I said again, madam.
And that's a simple answer to your simple question. Well, and I'm going to hang up and let you speak so somebody else can call it.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Professor, I've lived in my community, which is now St. Barnabas. People call it the Grove and stuff. And people always said Angliston. And I like to clear this distinction between Angliston and the Grove. When you come across East Street, from East Street to Blue Hill Road, to St. Barnabas Church, back to Robinson Road, that is the Grove. When you come from East Street to Wolf Road, going up, you take Robinson Road going towards the mall, that area section onto Clarge Road is Angliston. So when people they confuse it because we saw in an incident where they had a shooting where some young men were shot in Ridgeland Park. And they said, that's Angliston. I said, no, you don't know the difference between Angliston and the Grove or Ridgeland Park. And so when people said Angliston, I said, no, I live in my area for my last 60 plus years. I knew every person who lives next door to me, family members, friends. Everybody now who lives on the side of me, across the street from me, around me, 90% of them are non-Bahamians. I should know if I hear someone speaking Creole or English. And I know I watch parents. See, I watch people in our community. I don't know which community she grew up in or live in, but I've seen people from Mr. Alquitas and those as young children. Back in the day, their parents used to walk them to school. But I see a truck load or even a cadre, parents walking past you. And how you know they're not Bahamians? And I hate to say this, but when Bahamian parents taking their kids to school, they don't hardly speak to you. They just walk their kids to school and they go where they go. But the one thing I've learned from being around the Haitian community, especially those, if they walk past you in the morning with their children, they said, good morning. You hear that accent, good morning, daddy, or good morning. How am I supposed to know that who you are? If they walk past me and say, I wouldn't know who you are.
Yeah.
And so these are the little things that you pick up on. And I've seen it even in the church programs. They're the ones who always comes to most of these church program outreach programs. And so if it was not that many, then you would see it. But now I agree that the school curriculum has to be changed. I've seen people, I have family members who now have young kids, cannot get into schools in the community where they live because they say, oh, the school they then fuck out. I've seen the other day I was passing through Bank Lane and this young sergeant, I didn't know who he was. And I hailed him and he's like, I said, good morning. He said, good morning. He said, excuse me. He took out his phone because it rang. And then he went into a serious dialect conversation in Creole. So I said, whoa, I didn't know that. I just keep walking. So when I tell people that people who come into the inner cities, and we don't want us being in the inner city, we don't have a problem with people moving in. But we do have a problem when you're changing our dynamics. And we've seen it in the schools. We've seen it. I don't know how Bahamians will tell us who live these life that it ain't so. It used to be. No.
Well,
it's expired more.
the caller says she lives in the city herself.
But I was waiting for her to identify which part of the inner city because
I think she said Angliston.
well, Angliston is predominantly now filled with migrants. I don't know where.
But let me just say this. I used to know on the island of Providence,
Yes.
all the way back when the boundaries, I could have known where I was moving from one boundary
To
from
the
one constituency to the next constituency. Of course, they have all changed up.
yes.
Angliston stretched further out
Yes.
from where it
Used to be, as we know it.
and as we knew it back then.
Yes.
And of course, Kalani,
Yes.
a huge section
Yes.
all out west, and now they got all kind of other constituencies in there. Today I would get lost because I ain't quite sure. Am I crossing the boundary of Angliston or Marathon or whatever? I have to sit down and study the map and know the boundaries of the particular constituencies. But I think a lot of people may misunderstand the constituencies because they keep shifting.
Yes. You live in Fort Hill.
Fort Wayne Castle. Yeah.
I would tell anyone when I used to go around Fort Fincastle or even through Mason Addition,
Yes.
you basically almost say you knew those who were non-Bahamians
Of course.
in a handful.
Yes.
Today, when you go through Mason Addition or you go up on that Fort Hill,
Yes.
you got to be looking around to see who you recognize
Right.
as an old Bahamian family who you know.
That is
Because when
correct.
people open their mouth, you hear different.
You had a different thing. Yeah.
And
that's
so
correct.
I always tell people this, at the end of, I don't want people to get the perception that we hate foreigners.
But why,
because-
but let's stop on
Yeah.
that point right there. Because see, I have a distaste in my mouth and in my mind when I hear that kind of remark.
Yeah.
Because Bahamians have been very gentle and cooperative with strangers.
Yes.
All right? That is a part of our nature, part of our makeup.
Culture.
But unfortunately, we haven't had the reverse. The point is that it really gets me upset when I hear people talk about we're supposed to be humane. They need to be humane to themselves. I don't like the idea of people coming into my country, setting up shop, getting away with things. I was listening to another show the other day. They're talking about giving um, what they call amnesty to these strangers.
Yeah.
Brother Cartwright, I ain't get no amnesty from the time I was a Bahamian.
I
So,
think
no, hold on, just let me make this point. There hasn't been any consideration for those of us who have been genuine Bahamians from being a British subject coming over into the new nation called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I have yet to see any kind of uh, setup for us, but I see all kind of things setting up for these other people. Why should I go along with that? I'm not benefiting from that. My tax dollars are being taken away from me to help these strangers, these foreigners, these aliens, these outsiders. Now in Fort Castle, we have a bunch of strangers who don't speak English. Okay? And they are lounging around people's property, looking for a place to stay. And we know they don't belong there.
yes.
We know who is who in Fort Castle. But we got a lot of people up there who are not Bahamian citizens. They could never be Bahamian citizens. In fact, let me say it right now. Haitians could never, ever qualify
No.
to be citizens of this country.
I know right now, Professor, where I live, my brother has a house in the front, and it's been empty. And every person who's approached me for the last 2 years about that house to rent, 99.9 were non-Bahamians, mainly Haitians.
Yes.
Women come with their little children, daddy, house for rent. No. Next one come, lady came to me just yesterday, asked me if the house in the front. I said, no, it isn't available. And I said, like, you too young to try to rent a place. She said, no, my mom. And I said, okay, let me stand. I back out to the gate. Because she came in the gate. She opened the gate and came to the house. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, I walk her, talk to her. Come to find out her mom. She speaks English well, but her mom is Haitian.
Yeah.
And she said, I said, no, no. And you know, and every morning when I walk out of my gate, somebody who stops me, 9 times asks about that house.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, we have no problem with you coming into our country, but you bring your culture. And I will tell you this. So Linda talks about culture.
Yes, he did.
When you look at people who come to the Bahamas, they do not leave their culture.
They bring it with them.
They bring it with them. And everything they do is, for instance, when we look at the inner city, if you take going back in time, you could have counted how many non-Bahamians had shops or convenience
That is
stores
correct. Yes.
from East Street all the way down to Robertson Road,
Robinson Road. Yes.
and vice versa. Because if you go cross into Centerville, most of the businesses they were owned by white Bahamians.
That's correct.
And if you would go further down into Camp Road, most of those businesses were owned by middle class Bahamians.
Hmm.
Today, even you look at most of the food eateries in the inner city,
That's right.
they're no longer Bahamian. And I always, well, you know, I said, well, it's Creole Bahamian dish. No, it isn't. I said, you could look at all the foods and stuff, and I said, the Chinese, I told someone the other day, I said, I remember when you could account the Chinese businesses. And I said, the only Chinese business I knew when the food business was John Shea.
That's right. Yes.
Now, I can't remember. I can't recall all the names now because there's so many
Too
different names.
many. Too many. Yes.
So when people come from a culture, and the thing is, what we don't understand is that these bilateral agreements that we sign on to when it comes to education, and this is where I want people to understand, the Constitution of the Bahamas was only designed for Bahamians.
Yes.
Listen to me carefully. When it came to education, hospital, healthcare, NIB, all of these things, our Constitution was geared to us, who either came from being British into this new Bahamas or those who were born after July 10th.
That is correct.
Now, here's where I saw where problems start to rise. We allowed those who came into our country to be treated as equally as us.
Yes.
So we never said, hold on, if you coming into this country and you're going to use these facilities that is geared towards Bahamians, that comes with a cost.
Of course. Yes.
You have to pay.
That's right.
But if you don't do that, the country shifts.
It shifts.
And then what happens is that these people who comes into the country, all migrants who come in this country, because their child born in the Bahamas, they said, oh, my child got equal opportunity as you as a Bahamian. And you're just like, no. But the governments of yesteryear, since Linden and to the day, they keep doing things that basically the Bahamians starting to say, hey, you ain't doing this for me. You ain't doing this for our generation, the generation unborn. You're now putting them against the Bahamians.
That's correct.
And like I told the lady, there was a poster put up on the side of our island game. And the child who they considered the top student, because they plastered on the billboard. The name alone tells you that it wasn't a Bahamian. And so in the schools, whether they like it, people want to admit it or not. They say, well, oh, you ain't seen it like it used to be. Trust me. Look at those kids who basically, when it comes. And I say two things I've learned from most non-Bahamians when they come here and they do well in their education. Oh, they highlight that to let you know that they arrive.
Yes.
And we've seen it, we've heard it from many of those in Haitian communities, and they jump up. And that's one of the first things they tell you. We have this over you. We have this here. And if you look through the academics, accolades and stuff, we just had a caller told us, was a week ago, down at one of the schools when we were talking about family. He said this young lady got high honors and she's working at one of the automotive place, and how her family were non-Bahamians and how they were celebrated in their language and draped in the color of the parents' country's flag.
Exactly.
So that tells you that that's who they are.
So you have a clashing of cultures.
Yes, and culture. See,
Terrible.
when you have a country as small as ours, we have no problem adapting or allowing you. Because here's the thing I always tell people. They said, oh, no. I said, you need to be picking on the Haitians. But what we started to see, which separates them from some of the Jamaicans, because we have every August, Jamaica celebrates, descendants celebrate independence of Jamaica. And one thing I've noticed with them, you don't see them ride around in the motorcade stuff. They pick a spot, they go and they rent a spot, and you see, when you pass there, then you know, because you see them in all the colors of their ancestral country.
That's right.
But once that is so finished, you don't even know, because unless you hear their accent.
Yeah.
And so what all people said is, listen, we're not mad with you, all we said there is a way you go about it. And if you come into a country, you must adapt the culture. That's why America is where it is. You hear them, so that's why you see these hyphenated Americans. Because the Americans tell you got to be an American. And so if you're in America, you could be a Bahamian. They say, but you're a Bahamian American. They tell you you're a Haitian American, you're a Chinese American, you're a Japanese American, Italian American. The Bahamas, there's no such thing as hyphenated.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people comes with that mindset that when we get to the Bahamas, we're going to create a hyphenated country. Can't happen.
No, it can't happen, yeah. This is Professor Sidney Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network. My special guest for Cartwright. We are discussing some national issues, and this culture clash is a very serious one. Immigration is a major national problem. This is what people call the elephant in the room. And we have to do something about it, Bahamians. There are some people who are working on this issue, as was said on another show yesterday. And a lot is being done, but we need more people to understand what it is they can do to make sure that we save the Commonwealth of the Bahamas from persons who are trying to take it over. This is Professor Sidney Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network. We're going to go to a break. The lines are open 326-0271, 326-0272, 813-0271. We'll be back after the break.
Express Yourself Live will return right after this.
Summertime is for traveling and also shopping for back to school. The Brass and Leather Shop and the Luggage Store have
Let your voice be heard. Speak your mind and express yourself. Call in and participate at 326-0271 or 326-0272. WhatsApp us your concerns on 809-2310. Follow us live on Facebook and globalradio99.5fm.com. Express yourself.
This is Professor Sidney Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network, 99.5 FM. Bahamians, we have to make sure that we are not a part of the problem, because some of us have had some marriages of convenience to the foreigner, and it has caused some ill will, some bad blood. People get vexed, they get mad, they do all sorts of funny things. And so we must make sure that we do not participate in these marriages of convenience, because it will come back to bite you, and bite you hard. I've seen it happen to some people that I know personally, have gone into that foolishness, and they have had to pay a heavy price for that. Marriages of convenience cause problems. Marriage is not something supposed to be playing with. It could cause you debt too. And unfortunately, people have some very bad attitudes and behavior, which has caused families to suffer. Caller, you live on here. Go ahead, please. Caller, you
Hello.
live. Yeah, go ahead, caller.
Okay, I'm going to try to be brief, but I think that the story it gets warped because if you go back to the beginning and the arrival of the Haitians, there was exploitation of the Haitians at the time. There was even arrogance of saying if they couldn't speak English, they didn't have much of a mind. I know that, Mike, and it was you weren't even supposed to ever marry a Haitian. Those were the sort of things that were circulating.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have the children and the children and the children of those same people who have a deep resentment of the way that was treated. And then I think that if we don't really air the problem in the way that it needs to be aired and stop saying we don't mind them coming if they come the right way. Do you want 2 million Haitians or
No.
do you want 2 million Europeans or do you want 2 millions of everybody? If the Bahamas does not practice a quota where they control the number of children in our schools so that we
That
are
is
not
true.
disfavored,
That is
which is
true.
exactly what's happening.
Yes, ma'am.
I have also heard parents say that they can't get into schools because they're overbooked with children that are not our children.
Exactly.
And yet it gets glossed over.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we don't march for justice. We don't raise our voices. When that little girl was killed coming home from school, I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
in many countries there would have been demonstrations on the street
Yes, ma'am.
because who is responsible? The school or the authorities that would let a child walk home at that time of night
Yes, ma'am.
unaccompanied? It's not just the parents. And if we come from an African type of community where the safety depended on the nature of our relationship with each other.
Yes.
And then those people worked hard and scraped to send their children to school, and their children did not come back with a sense of wanting to fit in. They wanted to get out.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
when they left their homes, their ancestral homes. They don't care. They put anybody in it. They were not concerned about the safety and containing and saving the community. And that is a problem that is not caused by anybody except us.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, Sandy Port from Coral Harbor is a white community. They don't live with us. They live apart from us. They don't come and they don't get into, and most of them don't even know who we are. We are accepting all these different communities, the Indian community, the Chinese community, the Haitian, whoever they are.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
just let them come, and I don't think it's because we're kind and gentle. We just don't take responsibility, and we haven't really sat down and fought for our rights as parents, for the health of ourselves, for our children. We're not fighting. We talk. We get upset when a heinous crime is committed, and then we wait for the next heinous crime to air our grievances. But that is not what makes a nation run. We don't, when we talk about the Haitian problem, can you give me a figure? How many are born here? How many are in our schools? How many die here? How many retire here? How many are on NIB? We don't quote numbers. And so it remains a serious blob that nobody can really penetrate because the figures aren't there. Same thing for the Europeans, same thing for the Chinese, for everybody that comes here. We don't know who they are. And so I personally have been on buses with very young children, and those buses were driven, some of them, I think, by Haitian nationals, and they put on the nastiest movies and songs that should not be allowed around children.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
nobody, I speak up, but nobody else does.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, people just and I see Bahamians come and curse in front of children. They don't say there's a child present and I should contain myself. It's
Yes.
like we have become so far from where we were that the only way back is to remember who we are. Anyway,
Yes.
that's my take.
Ma'am, I agree
Yes.
with what you said.
Yes.
You're
We all
Thank
agree
you
with
very
you,
much for
you know,
your contribution.
Commission.
Brother Cartwright, go
You
ahead.
know, she's right, but you know, one of the things that I've always told people is that we as Bahamians, we adopt cultures of others. We are more like a sponge. If you notice, if you've grown up, we used to listen to all our Bahamian music. And if you listen to our young Bahamians who are now in the music industry, they said, well, this ain't appealing. So you find them more into dapping, reggae, or Jamaican, or whoever. We've gone away from who we are as a people. So when you see people come into your mix and they don't change their culture to that, the only thing I notice with non-Bahamians now is that they're taking on the names of the Bahamians. But
That is true, yes.
but the culture of the Bahamas, they're not taking that
They're
on.
not taking that on.
And so
Yes.
you see it in full display.
But the lady made an interesting
Yes.
remark about Sandy Port.
Yeah.
They are the white people out there, they live apart from us. Only we in these
In this city.
inner city areas, we take in all the crap. Anybody who comes along, we absorb it, as she said, and we have got to know from whence we came, and we are absorbing every single thing. We do not stand up and fight.
No.
I'm going to get back to that because I have a caller
Yes.
on the line. Call you live on air. Go ahead, please.
Brother Thompson, how you do today?
I'm doing okay. How are
Good
you?
day to you and your guests.
Good day, my brother.
We have some people that came in here to the Bahamas, came in here to New Providence, some 30 years ago, and they still have their accents today. They still speak, even though they try to talk like a Bahamian, they still have their language in them.
Yeah.
They
cultural
don't
language.
leave their language.
Their cultural language.
The Bahamian go to America for 2 days. When they come back, hey man, what you say? Hey, you know. But let me say this, Brother Thompson, and to your co-host.
All right.
We are our biggest problem.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what the lady said.
Innovation is bringing the whole shit when they come here to the Bahamas.
No.
That's right.
If you can't find no place to live, no place to work,
Return home.
no place, you going?
Yeah.
Return home.
Yes,
You going?
that's
Yes.
correct.
You know, when those people move, see, and then what they do too is when they move out of them house in Angleston and the Grove and they give them to them quick because they don't have to do no put no bathroom in them. They ain't got to do nothing with them.
Nothing at all. Nothing.
They moving out there.
Yes.
As I'm saying,
That's
my
right.
mommy moved off Moore Avenue, the house that I live in now. I moved twice in my life. I'm 57 years old. I only moved once as a matter of fact. But I live in two houses because the house I born in, when we moved out of that, we moved here where I'm at now. And my niece, one of my mommy niece was going through some marital problem.
Yes.
So she asked if she could have stayed into the house. And can I tell you now, my mommy niece, grandchildren now live in that house.
Yes.
Grandchildren. Then the people that was wanting to rent their house out to the, like you say, Brother Cartwright, to the foreign people. My mommy say no.
No.
She ran out. She got niece and now she have children and all. Right now, and I'm so sad today. I didn't go back there and take that house. Because do you know Brother Cartwright, are you familiar with the urban renewal in Angleston?
Well, I haven't been to that one, but I know about the urban renewal in St. Barnabas.
Okay, this one is right by St. Barnabas Graveyard on Moore Avenue.
Okay,
That's the yard.
okay.
That house in the back there, there's only 3 houses in the yard.
Yeah, I know that.
Malachi Lundy,
Yes.
who would run for the year for them,
Yes.
Miss Mabel, and our house was the house in the back. Our house is the only house there now.
Oh,
Because the urban renewal sits on a piece of the property where Miss Malachi, Miss Mabel house was.
okay.
But I born in that house. When you talk about the inner city, I was the inner city baby.
Yeah.
I know Horsfield baby. I know Shirley Street baby. I born in the inner city. I
Yeah.
born in Angleston.
Yeah, many of us, and see, bro, one of the things that I tell people, I said, I don't look at the constituency as they label it. I always tell them I look at the community. So when I hear people say, "Oh, where you live?" I say 2nd Street. "Oh, no, you from Angleston?" I said, "No, I'm not from
No, you
Angleston.
from the Grove, man.
I'm from the
You're from
Grove."
the Grove,
Before
yeah.
it's the 8th Street, it's
Yeah,
the Grove.
And
Yeah.
then I tell people you go on the other side, that's Angleston. And it only goes so far.
Well, if you live 2nd Street, the Grove, you should have known the King doors, Julian and Cardi King doors.
Yeah.
Okay, but Julianne was my brother Ken Motorboat wife.
What about in Grand Bahama?
Yeah, he died now. Yeah.
Yes, John Luban. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the classic dancers.
Yes.
Then we walked from Avenue to Julianne, feel like we getting away. My aunt, right on the corner of 2nd Street and Robinson Road, the Dewdrop Club.
Yes.
That's my aunt,
Okay.
Madeline Johnson.
Okay.
Then you go into Adelaide House, will be the first house on the. She's dead now too, but the first house on the left hand side as you turn into Adelaide.
Yes.
I know where the Grove.
Yeah.
Then when Franklin Ferguson had the little club across the road. I know when BJ Moore stores daddy had the food store.
Man, you bringing back some old memories.
Okay, I know the Grove. I know the Grove, man.
Yes.
I know the Grove.
See, people
Then I
don't.
talk to some people, they
Yeah.
say, but you're so old.
No.
But I see what with me,
Yes.
I was never a good reader. So I had to remember a lot of things.
And people don't understand that when you talk about those communities, it ain't like we trying to say, well, we weren't excelling. We did, because many of the middle class and businessmen now, most of them grew up in the inner city.
Some of the best
Yes.
business people had started out in the
Yes.
Grove.
I saw a clip that the former prime minister showed, because I was telling people that's where he grew up, he lived there. And
Mhm.
he showed the clip of his old home through Exuma Street. And he said how him and his brothers and used to pull string across the road and think the scared little courts, the scared women, the young girls didn't believe that snake crawling across the road. And I said, boy, that was an old trick we used to do when I was a little boy. And so I say, so these are things that people get offended. Some people get mad when you say it and you try to explain, because I will tell you that when you have not lived in the inner city, you don't understand, you don't know the inner city. Because I always tell people, and I remember sitting with a friend of mine, Scrooge, and we were talking about, he said, people think that the people in the inner city are dumb. He said, no, inner city people do not tend to
Some
make
of
them
the
dumb.
smartest set of people
Oh,
come
yeah.
from between the inner city
Yes.
and the Family Island.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Then you look at the Grove, your place.
Yep.
The Grove is almost basically Auckland,
Yep.
Most of the businessmen in the Grove, the majority of the businesses in the Grove were Auckland's men.
Oh, yeah. But I'll tell
You
you
might
a
have
secret.
a couple of Cat Island people in there, but the Auckland's dominated. Even Angleston.
But I will tell you a secret that most people don't realize, because I'm a little bit older than you.
Yes, sir.
But between Angleston and the Grove, those two communities, did you realize outside of Grand Bahama, Andros, Abaco, and a little bit of Inagua, you had a handful, you had a deep rooted of Turks Islanders. And you know how I know? When the Premier of Turks Island was here, and we went to a function, and I looked around, and he asked me, my name, I said, McCartwright. He said, no, that's your daddy name. And I told him, he said, oh, I said, Henfield. So, man, you Turks. And I called my uncle Marvin, who lives in Turks, and he said, yeah. He said, I supposed to tell you all this. Between Angleston and the Grove, many of those, he said, you had the Auckland's Maguana crew, you had the Turks Island crew, and then you had the others, and then he said, then you sprinkle it up, but your dad does the Long Islands. And he said,
Brother Carter, let me say this in closing.
Yeah.
Let me say this because I know some other people might want to get on. Then one time ago, all of the so-called bad people, bad boys, used to be between Angleston and the Grove.
yeah.
But you'll never hear nothing happening in Angleston and the Grove.
No.
Okay.
They used to go out and do their food. Then they come back home, they fall right back in line.
Yes.
Okay, caller. Thank
Yeah,
you for
man.
your contribution.
But you
Okay.
see, Professor, this is what that thing, another caller?
We have another
Take the clip.
the clip. Okay,
Yes.
we'll get to the clip. But what you saying, Brother Conroy?
The thing what people don't realize, and this is something that I've always tried to tell people, when you look at those communities in the inner city, you had the Grantstown, Baintown, and those areas. All of
Right.
those communities had their own little cultural festival that used to bring kept stay with the community. the Coconut Grove Festival, which was set up by Mr. Edmund Moxie,
Yes.
the Jome Village. You had the Joe Billy
Festival
Festival.
for Grandstand. Yes.
Then if you look at Angleston had their own festival.
Yes, they did.
These were communities, and this is how we grew up. What hurt us was that as we got older, different cultures came into the community. So those cultures, they changed that
That's
format.
correct.
And this is one of the things I've been telling all MPs of the inner cities. You have to go back to those, find out why those festivals were so thin, because it brought everyone together.
Yeah.
And now, because you don't have that in place, you now have people now, you're becoming, like I call it, like clans, and which is something I tell people over and over. It's very dangerous for the Bahamas, because when you get people set up themselves in little clans, it changes the whole mindset and the culture of the neighborhood.
That is true. That is quite right. Mr. Blusa, you can put on the tape.
So, another case, I remember someone said to me, why can't we allow Bahamians, ordinary citizens, to walk around? Things like this, when I look at the United States, can always happen.
Yes.
And for me, I always say that, as a school, for some reason, I have no problem with someone having guns to protect themselves if you have some guidelines with it.
Yes.
I think nowadays in the United States, they now have to look and say, you know what? We agree that every person have a right to defend themselves or to bear arms. But in certain areas should be considered, just like we say, a no-gun zone.
Yes.
And so you got to see the ways you can basically make amendments without taking away certain freedoms people have. Because sometimes too much freedom can cause chaos.
That's true.
And those innocent little children, they ain't do nobody nothing.
No, they didn't.
And the person, because you were mad with the way the country is and stuff, that's why when you vote, that's what your entitlement to do. If you don't think this person's going to do good representation, you don't vote him in.
That's correct.
And you move on. But to take it upon yourself to punish innocent folks and to show you how sad and all of this is, right? The person, I consider him a coward because they didn't want to face the courts to take responsibility.
Yes.
They killed themselves.
Kill yourself, yeah.
And so all of this is very sad, but I'm also mad because they weren't man enough or woman enough to face their own punishment.
I agree with you. I believe you have a caller for the card. Right. Caller,
Yes.
you're live on air. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
Caller.
Okay, Mr. Cartwright.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Thompson, listen. Here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about life before. Okay, because people always say, which is probably true. Our ancestors came from Africa. Okay, so I'm always looking at trying to get the understanding how was life for Africans, our ancestors, pre-slavery. Because we never really talk about it. We always talk about slavery, coming in indentured, getting independent. Okay, so, and then now we're here at this crossroad with immigration and trying to understand and why is it so difficult for us, that for our leaders, our officials, to even follow the law. Okay. And so then we talk about, then I start to then question these developments. When we talk about major developments and who are they for? Who are going to be employed at these establishments? Because when you bring in persons into an economy, say they're coming in from foreign and they come in just to look for a job, that's no good to our economy, because that's really I'm coming to take from the economy. Okay, and so that's why I say, and I just can put this one plug in. I always say as a politician, if I was to become an MP, my whole focus for governance would actually be just isolate, kind of find investors for my citizens. I'm looking for persons to come and invest in product or some type of infrastructure and hopes that Bahamians can benefit. No, I want to find persons out there globally who may have a disposable income of 1 million or more, and who I could connect with a Bahamian and gardeners who may have a business plan, which we'll assist them with, to invest in that business. So I can partner my Bahamian with a foreigner who's rich to come and establish something here for Bahamians to work in, versus what they're doing now, and they've never really done it. But I'm talking to something foreign to the Bahamian public, like, oh, why they didn't think about this? Well, because this is how they take advantage of us.
Yeah. What you're saying, that I was speaking with a friend of mine yesterday, and we were talking about land. And I said to him, I said, yes. I said, let me give you a joke. He said, go ahead. I said, you can get mad when I say this to you. And he said, oh, go ahead. I said, we've heard Mr. Bain talk about giving every Bahamian an acre of land. We've heard Dr. Minnis say that they wanted to do government subdivisions where all infrastructures are paid for, and you buy the property for $20,000. And then we hear the Minister of Housing saying that we building homes. And I said to him, I said, you know something? All of them are right, And he said, how that could work? I said, here's what you can do. You can take Dr. Minnis' idea for the subdivision with infrastructure. I said, you can take Mr. Bain's idea for an acre. But what I would do is create small gated communities of 25 with those acres, with infrastructure in, and the government build it, and that $20,000 which you invest into that gated community, which is for $20,000. We would not only, like now, take Mr. Bell's idea, we build homes, but each one of those homes will come with an attachment like a cottage or villa, so that and then would we do it all through the mortgage corporation and the local banks. And
But
what
I
we
think funding should never be the problem because
Yeah.
if they could raise $100 million from the capital local market, just about every partnership that they've gone into, which then they thought persons who can partner with the government should have their own money is. But if you've been following these contracts, every person that they went to contract through, they had to come to the public through CHC file to raise monies for their venture. That just didn't make no sense to me.
And so when I said to them, Brother Henschel, that imagine now someone, a Bahamian living in the inner city, has an opportunity to now go and get own his home. And I said, here's the thing. Not only because he paid, I said, here's the great side on this. While he is paying through the government mortgage corporation for that home, which is like I say, you pay $2,000 a month, $2,000 a year. So that's like for that home. Now that you go get your funding, you already have all the infrastructure, you can now rent that that apartment attached to your home. So now what you're doing, you're creating wealth. So in one instance that you're moving up, but then you also create, and he said, well, what if I said, now here's the kicker. Now I know a lot of people, they can get mad. They say, now you would set a standard that this is the standard that you want, because what you're trying to do, build character. And I said, you don't do just one. You could use that as a template that you could go all around New Providence, and then you take it into the Family Islands. So now you will have all of these small gated communities owned by Bahamians, that when foreigners who wants to come in and say rent, or Bahamians who want to rent, you can now basically create wealth, because now what you would rent your unit for in a gated community would be different than what you would rent for in an inner city. And so you build, and they said, well, what happened to the homes in the inner city? I said, well, you can take those homes, and if some of them the properties are large enough, you can now work on creating structures for the homeless.
Well, we should be able to start to look at a restoration plan for these inner cities, because when you talk with me as a child, right, growing up, it ain't like we ain't been to fish fry 20,000 times and see the same thing over and over as if we get in the fish fry see something new.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been passing structures in this country that ain't being touched for like 30 years. They talking about frozen.
Yes. But they get mad when you talk this kind of talk now. You got to be careful.
MPs come in and out. MPs come in and out with the promise to fix these things, to change with their mindset, because we don't always have to pull people out. We could go in there and we could recon and we could start to redevelop, because even if you temporarily relocate persons and redevelop the way we lay out that particular community for the Pacific area, you're talking about breaking that down and rebuilding these gated communities right in these areas where we talk about putting in now proper watering system, because we talk about these water.
Yeah.
These free pumps, these people go to pump 20 gallons a day times 1,000 people, 2,000 people. We don't even see when they have these pumps. But the people who now want to pay have to now carry more burden, because we keep allowing persons to take advantage of what we consider free, but are taxpayers, and taxpayers have to carry these burdens. So these are the things that we have to tighten up. So when we talk about eliminating, and then we talk about providing free essentials like water. So when you really build these places, you eliminate water, you put these in the homes so they got proper running water, proper sewaging system, so they got proper accommodation and amenities, so they can start to build themselves.
Yeah.
You don't really necessarily have to take them out.
Okay, caller. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, we're going to go to a break, and I'll comment when I get back. This is Professor Sidney Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network, 99.5 FM. We'll be back after the break. There are some things that we need to stand for. That's the Bahamian culture. And people coming in here will bring their behavioral patterns, which may not necessarily be best for us. They bring their language, they bring their ways in here. And unfortunately, we have been absorbing too much of what others are doing. We're not standing up like that lady called, and she gave a good account of what's happening. Uh, the kind of language on the bus, obscenity being played, children on these school buses and so on. And it's having a very negative effect on our people. In fact, we are not standing up. And that is why, even though people may call into the shows, that's fine. That's all well and good. That's only a start. You know what I always say? Let's count what's happening on the ground, where you live, how the people are interacting with each other, because that's going to be the real test as we move forward in this country. Because there has to be something put in place by those of us who know better for the protection of the children. We have a situation where we have problems in these various communities, but people are not standing up. They are too silent. I don't want my voice to be heard. I don't want to be seen. You say that on the show. You have people who do these kinds of things, but they sit around and gossip about people. But they never get to look at the things that happen to us every day, just like this particular incident that happened in Minnesota. And the thing is that you don't know when something else is going to break out. Like the caller said, you know, you have that community, Sandy Port. They live apart from us who are in the inner cities. But we in the inner cities, we absorbing all this crap. Everyone who comes and just dumps things on us. And we just accept it. But God, right?
Yes. Professor, you know, this boils down to the leadership and those that we send to Parliament
Exactly.
of making lives better. And people say, oh, well, I said, no, we ain't asking them to give you money, put it in your hand, but make those communities whereby that the surrounding communities, that the same opportunity that you have in a Sandy Port,
Yes.
same opportunity you have in a Life Key,
And Albany.
and those things,
Yes.
that you could basically do a buffer in between for
course.
those in the inner city who are aspiring to excel.
Yes.
And then you could turn around as they move out. You can now turn around and say, you know what, let's put this here in the inner city. Because some people might never want to leave that inner city.
That is true.
And so you want to put things in place because we in the inner city see a lot of the hurt and deprivation going on in our communities. And the hurtful part is that we try our endeavor best, but because it is such a paramount of other things happening, we are not
of issues.
yes,
problems.
that we are not equipped financially or structurally to do all the heavy lifting
That is true.
that we need, whereby that if you basically have things in place, that's why I told people that if you can do whereby that Bahamians can now have their own small gated communities, like I said, you give them an acre
idea.
and you allow them to have an attached apartment onto that structure, that they can now go to the plans, that they can go to the bank because the government is building it. And now you go through the government with the mortgage corporation. So you have a chance. The government makes money because if you start to do that in New Providence and then you look at that template and you say, now we're going to take it into the family islands.
Of course.
You're now creating a culture of upliftment. And so those in the city also will be part of the upliftment because why? We now have structures in place for where we see many of the homeless, those who are mentally challenged,
Yes.
can now stay in their communities and be a part of the upliftment.
Of course.
And so you find that some people I've known, people said to me, man, I've seen people who, no matter what you do, you're not going to get them to basically gravitate to a proper home. But if you put them in an environment whereby that structure at night, that they can be comfortable and their mindset at ease, that is the big step you move in building your country.
Yes.
And if you have persons coming into your country and they are on work permits and they're looking for places to live, you will now have things in place and you let them know this is how it's going to be done. This is how.
Be done, yes.
So you will now have a control mechanism, and you know, and you say to people, and this is why I tell you, for the life of me, and I remember speaking to a gentleman of Haitian descent, Haitian, and he said the reason why he never used to be too particular with national insurance, he said because when he went, they told him, you know, you're not a payment, so you can't, but you must contribute because the government of the Bahamas say anyone working in the Bahamas must contribute to NIB. So I said, so you're going to have a lot of these people come here and then they can get paid under the table. I said, why not create a separate extension from NIB whereby that all non-Bahamians, you working in the Bahamas, this is where you fall under the category and you contribute to that.
Yes.
So you don't have this headache of trying to say, well, this one coming into, no. All of you guys and who fall in this category who have insurance in the Bahamas, this is your contribution. This is what you pick. So you don't have, so you'll have the same, you'll have an entity, but you will have two separate, one for the citizens and one for the non-citizens.
Yes.
And so you would then have a harmony, and then you go as a government, as a parliament, you can now say, you know what? We have so many people working, and we got Bahamians working, and we got the non-Bahamians coming in and contributing. And we can say, you know what? We can put a cap right now.
And this is what we have not done. Like the caller said,
yes,
we need to know how many are working,
yes,
what sort of work they're doing, and we lack the correct information.
They don't need to
tell you. A lot of things are being withheld from us. So we don't even have a cap on how many people are supposed to be in here. You just can't keep adding people, more and more people being added. They're going to have this problem, that problem, the next problem like we have now. And so we need to put, only so much you can take. Because it's creating all kind of unnecessary issues, and the Bahamian feels that, you know, he's getting left out.
He's been displaced.
He's been displaced. That's what's happening. You see? And then, like it is being said about the entertainment industry, you see the vast number of restaurants and groups coming into the hotels, and the people were supposed to be coming out of the hotels to go into the community, into where the people are.
But you know, Professor, what I always looked at, and this is one of the things that I told someone, that the unions and the former Prime Minister, Mr. Ingram, I think dropped the ball.
They did.
With their hotels back then. And so I said, they didn't have to build a 600-room structure. But imagine if you would have cut that down and you sold it to the union. And the union, in its first 10 years, its staff, they operate that hotel.
Exactly.
And then at a later date, for them to now expand, you offer shares to the Bahamian public. Yeah. So the money stays
right in.
And you turn it over.
Keep turning it over.
You know, I told people that the union back in the day with Mr. Bobby Clinton and Robert Gardner and those guys,
yes,
they were the first one who started their own buying the hotel.
Yes, they did.
And there was people didn't understand it at the time.
No, they didn't.
But that was a great thing.
It was a great idea. We could use it today.
We could use it today. We have a lot of these credit unions, and I keep saying to people that, you know, I said to someone the other day, these islands of ours, because we now don't have banks in them, why not try as a parliament to focus, to allow stuff like these credit unions to go into these islands, set up shop, so these people wouldn't have to leave to come to their city, they could stay right there.
Right where they are.
And you could then basically do, if the economy, as the economy grow, you could do like in some islands where fishing and farming is their major industries. You could then do a smaller branch off for a credit union bank dealing with fishing industry and a credit union dealing with agriculture. So there's many ways you can grow your economy without having to borrow or relying on foreign investment. Because
Yes.
the one thing Beamers don't understand, if I'm a non-Bahamian and I come in here and invest 10 million or 20 or 30, 40 million dollars, I definitely want my people, them who I basically trust, comfortably to watch my money.
Yeah.
And so my thing is this: you can have them come in and then you say to them, listen, every person you bring in must train at least 3 Bahamians over the year of that contract. So at the end of his contract, 5-year work permit, he should have trained 15 Bahamians. And if each individual trained 15 Bahamians in his field, that Bahamian might turn around and say, you know what, babe, I like the job here, but I know Professor Thompson got this business doing the same thing. I'd rather go work for Professor. And he now brings in, he takes his professional training and bring an upliftment to your business. Because why?
Exactly.
You bring in it, you have a Bahamian who doesn't have to move. You don't have, and all the things that you would have to do for
For
non-Bahamian.
non-Bahamian. You have to be headed with that.
Yeah, that money you could now save to give that
Of course.
individual a higher and better salary.
A better salary. That's correct.
And this is what I keep telling people that for some reason, our parliamentarians keep trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like, no,
It's not working.
it's just look around you, build on the structure that you have now. Take ideas from everybody and you go through it. And if you don't understand it, let them explain it to you how it goes.
Yes. Yes.
And you go from there. You know, when you look at it right now, the country that Ukraine, where they're now having problems,
Big problems.
is only 34 years old. Only 34 years old. But Ukraine was further ahead even after 34 years it got independence from
Yes.
the break off from Russia.
From Russia. That's
Before that excursion, you could see the massive. You look right now in Africa, and the area used to be called Upper Volta, which is now Burkina Faso.
Yes.
But that young leader now, you see how his mindset, and he isn't changing, trying to reinvent. Really, no, everything he's doing, he said, is of the former leader who died, who was killed. He's in his memory and his honor that he's building on. So he's like, we ain't borrowing no money from outside the country. We got gold. We can use our gold.
Yes.
We can build our own roads. We can find ways to train our people to farm.
Yes.
So if a fellow went to prison for stealing a loaf of bread, minor crime, you say, no. We ain't gonna make you feel bad. We can help you get yourself back into society. You can put your hand in the ground and do the same to feed yourself and your family. So as you notice, the country is now basically building itself.
Yes.
That is what we stopped doing, because in the early days, we did have a lot of produce and stuff that
Of
people
course,
could-
yes.
And then all of a sudden, and my thing was that governments don't know how, or I would say the parliament don't know how to encourage, because we used to have 3 and 4 generations. And what happened was that when those generations, one who died, and the second generation said, oh man, I can't do this no more. The government was supposed to say, listen, man, okay, I see where you can, but here's what we want you to do. Why don't you tender this up for shares? We allow Bahamians to buy this company, and we keep this product going, and we train our people. So more, and the way it is now, we have more modernized technology is leaps and bounds, warp speed around us, and how we can do things.
Right.
Bahamians don't realize that all of our islands have natural creeks. We could convert some of these creeks to fish farms.
That is correct, yes.
The technology which you now use to cultivate the ground, we could go and start to plant crops that don't need that much soil. And in other areas, we can then create soil. So it ain't like you ain't, and then like Mr. Sands said in construction, we don't tell people that these jobs are exciting, what they make, what you can make on a yearly basis.
Yes.
We just said, oh, that's job there, what are you doing that? But I ain't into that. I remember when growing up, you hear someone say, but only a dumb person who ain't got an education drive trucks. Or he drives, work on the garbage truck.
Right.
Now you see, and when you see these groups of fellas now got their own garbage truck company.
Right, yeah.
You've got trucking companies.
Right.
And so when you look at it, it's like, hey, we could build on what we have now.
We
It's
can.
small,
We can.
but let's build on it.
And they got a different name now, sanitation.
Yes. So when you look at it, these are ways that you basically nation building,
Yes.
and you get people to take pride
Take
into
pride.
themselves.
Yes. Take pride. Take pride.
Because
That's
if
very
a fella know that in this country, he could pick and choose for work, job wise. He ain't hitting his head about, hey, I can't make this, or he can say,
exactly.
the guys who were around him who were criminals, they're gonna say, hold on, man, you know what? This ain't cutting it because this ain't making sense. He's now gonna become conform and try to better himself.
Well, of course.
And this is how you build your communities, especially because your strength of a nation comes from the bottom, not
That's
at the
right.
top.
Not from the top.
So if you uplift the
bottom
poor, and people keep forgetting, so Lyndon No's idea of a middle class was a great thing because
Yes, it
it
was.
made it easier for you as a young Bahamian to move up in life.
Upward line. That's
Because in
correct.
most
That's
Caribbean
correct.
countries, there's only rich and poor.
Rich and poor, yeah.
And so this is the
That's a
mindset
different mindset.
we need to approach and we need to embellish.
Yes.
And any parliamentarian or politician who come in whereby they tell you, oh, well, we got these companies waiting to come in here and just give jobs. No, you say, hold on. I got that same idea. Will you give me the opportunity to the backing to get that kind of financing?
Yes.
To start up. That's what we have to do. We have to start looking inwardly.
Inwardly, yes. Inwardly,
And what
that's
we
correct.
and we could be. I'm not saying we close out external, but we basically will then have a small niche for the external.
Yes.
But the greater part of your country's growth and finances should come from within.
Within, yes.
Because I've heard them complain about the fish fry, and I was like, wow. They said the trucking and this. I said, okay. You have a container port in the back of fish fry. That has already been established and up and running. I said, then what you need to do is have fish fry operate at a certain time, and then you have the trucking drivers them operate at a certain time.
Yes.
And I said, what you then do with fish fry, all of those places out there servicing food to the tourists and stuff, you got to keep your surroundings clean.
Definitely.
And you have to also, if you want to expand to non-Bahamian food, culturally, whatever, you then turn around and you've got enough space that you could give a certain pocket and say, this is only so much we can allow in here. You could set up shop. And you pay for it. Now, your license can't be the same as what a Bahamian pays for.
Exactly.
But this is how you turn your money over. So I keep telling parliamentarians and politicians, great ideas don't only come from you. Talk to the people in the communities that you represent, and you'll be surprised how they can help
But
you.
it's the people that have the ideas.
Yes.
Because apparently they don't have any. They don't have any at all.
No.
You can see from the evidence
Yes.
that there's nothing happening.
And we keep sending them back, and they keep
And
coming
we keep
back.
sending them back.
they give it the same
over and over
results.
again. Same results. That is the problem. We're going to go to another break. This is Professor Sidney McCarter, Walter Thompson. That's it.
I just look at the clock. I just look at the clock.
It doesn't tell me. It was how you let it happen.
I just beat the clock. I said yes, because I
Oh,
thought
wow.
it was a break was set.
I thought. Anyhow, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll
Yes.
continue our conversation tomorrow. This is Professor Sidney McCarter, Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network 99.5 FM. We're grateful for those who called in. With those who were listening, please tune in tomorrow from 2 to 4. I'll be here with my special guest, Brother Cartwright. Tomorrow is Open Line Friday, isn't it right?
Yes.
Open Line Friday tomorrow. We'll be opening the subjects wide, and we will be discussing anything tomorrow. This is Professor Sidney McCarter, Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network. Bahamians, please pray for the safety of this country. We got to put God in our knowledge. We can't do without God. We must work with God. This is Professor Sidney McCarter, Walter Thompson on the Global Radio Network 99.5 FM. Have a pleasant afternoon.